She had no reason to, know how to handle herself in that moment.
According to the affidavit, the male walked towards the back sliding glass door and presumably left the scene. But committing murder and getting away with it are two different things, says Fox.
For an offender to get away with a crime, murder, they have to bat 1,000. They have to be absolutely perfect. If they make one singular mistake, that's all it takes.
And that one possible mistake in this case may have been the sheath to the K-bar knife. One like this was found on the bed next to Maddie Mogen. It would lead investigators to the door of a man studying for a career in criminology, Brian Kohberger, the alleged killer.
Day after day and week after week pass, and there is no suspect that is arrested. What was that time like for you?
That was the worst.
For 47 days after the murders, the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan, and the country waited.
We do not have a suspect at this time.
And wept. And weighed in.
People of Idaho and those throughout our nation who provided information has been very impressive. We've received over 19,000 tips.
Then, on December 30th, 2022, Brian Kohberger was arrested in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. At the time, his attorney said Kohberger looked forward to being exonerated.
What goes through your mind when you see the face of the alleged killer?
Oh, I wonder why. Who is this? Why? Never heard of the person before. It still is confusing. Why?
At this point, the families knew as much about Kohberger as the public did, a PhD candidate studying criminology just 10 miles away at Washington State University in Pullman.
I remember thinking I only have a few minutes to look up this individual and to try to get any credible information before things start getting wonky.
Some of Olivia Gonsalves's online discoveries of Kohberger made her uneasy.
He had made a few posts on Reddit in which he was conducting, it seems like a questionnaire to people in prison or jail who had committed crimes. How did you pick your victim or your target?
For 7 weeks, the families and the country were left wondering.
I think for this type of an investigation, 47 days is actually quick.
Criminologist and CBS News consultant Brianna Fox says the Moscow police kept things moving. Starting with a video canvas which produced footage from those early morning hours, showing a white car making 3 passes by the girl's house starting around 3:30 a.m. Less than an hour later, investigators say the killer struck.
They noticed that this car approached King Road, left, came back, almost did a U-turn, finally went there around 4 or 6 in the morning, and that car then departed in about 25 minutes and sped off.
Multiple surveillance cameras then captured that white car as it traveled what appeared to be a less direct route back to Pullman, Washington, arriving around 5:30 a.m. That information helped investigators identify the make and model of the vehicle.
And we're looking for a 2011 to a 2013 Hyundai Elantra.
Washington State Police find the car parked outside Graduate Housing. They get the license plate and they get Brian Kohberger's name. They then get the driver's license and they see the bushy eyebrows that in the eyes of one of the Moscow detectives must be the eyebrows of the killer.
Now armed with a warrant, investigators retrieved cell tower data from that morning which captured Kohberger's phone around 2:47 a.m. in Pullman when it suddenly stopped connecting to the network. According to the affidavit, this was also around the time cameras caught a white Elantra leaving his apartment complex.
There was an indication that he turned off his cell phone, which is something that a lot of people do, and they want to avoid law enforcement knowing their whereabouts.
His cell phone signal was picked up again 2 hours later south of Moscow as it traveled back toward his apartment building. The affidavit described a deeper dive into Kohberger's phone history that revealed this was a familiar neighborhood to him, going back several months.
Cell phone records indicated that he has traveled past and was very near the vicinity of his crime scene on 12 separate occasions.
And towers actually captured a 13th trip, just hours after the murders.
Anecdotally, a lot of killers, they like revisiting the memory of the crime. I won. I was able to get away with this, and you guys won't catch me.
But they had one secret weapon to make their case. They had the knife sheath, and there was a microscopic spot of DNA on it. Could they tie this DNA to Kohberger?
According to the affidavit, the DNA was found on the button snap of the sheath. But when investigators ran it through the national database, there were no matches. It's unclear if Brian Kohberger knew law enforcement was watching when he left Washington in mid-December. Kohberger and his father, who had flown in from Pennsylvania, drove back home together in his white Elantra.
Kohberger, from what I've heard, tells the father that he's in trouble with his job. He's concerned enough about his son to want to make the drive back with him.
On the 2,500-mile journey from Washington, they are stopped twice for traffic violations.
Hello? What's also interesting is Kohberger's reaction to the police. Where's your car? Okay. He's pretty calm and cool.
Father and son made it home to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, where Bloom says investigators initiated a stealth operation.
So what they did is they sent a team of Pennsylvania state troopers to Kohberger's family's house.
Law enforcement recovered Kohberger's father's DNA from the trash outside their home, which tested as a high probability it was the biological father of whoever left DNA on the knife sheath.
So that was the eureka moment which they decided they could get an arrest warrant.
At that point, they made the arrest of Brian Kohberger, and they got a separate, essentially search warrant for his DNA.
And when investigators compared his DNA to the DNA on the knife sheath, they say it was a statistical match, at least 5.37 octillion times more likely to be Kohberger's than anyone else.
Where you sit today, are you certain that Brian Kohberger is the killer?
With what you know.
I don't trust anybody or anything, so I have to see it myself. I have to see everything.
As the months pass, Steve and Christy Gonzalez remain a united front in wanting justice, but their wait has brought different perspectives.
Your mind is still open to the potential,
Of course.
that it could have been someone else?
Of course. Yep. I go into that 100%, yeah. Of course.
That's not where you are.
No.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think there's any slam dunk.
Criminologist Brianna Fox says with the gag order in place, any hint of Kohberger's defense has come from court documents.
It seems that the defense is alleging there was a rush to judgment. Law enforcement made an arrest too fast, and they focused on their client too quickly.
A defense filing did reveal Kohberger's alibi for the night of the murders. It simply stated Mr. Kohberger was out driving alone.
The defense is not necessarily having to prove that he's innocent. They just have to raise doubt.
Both Fox and Howard Bloom think the defense can find ways to poke holes in the prosecution's case, challenging some of the key evidence presented in the affidavit, including the cell phone location data and the white Elantra.
There's other concerns, such as whether Brian Kohberger's car was accurately identified at the onset, or if that was revised after knowing what Brian Kohberger drove.
The cell phone data makes one suspicious of Kohberger, but it's not convincing